A few weeks later, when we came to Allentown to conduct our test, guess who walked into our experiment? We watched as Alex went into the room. His mother watched too, along with Alex's 6-year-old brother. That's Alex with his back to the camera. He spots the bag in the weight box and picks it up. And now, watch what he does next.
Oh, God.
The kid whose best friend had just been shot and killed aims the semi-automatic straight at his companion.
At that moment, I think I was buried and brought back to life because I wasn't expecting my child to pick it up or to actually point it, not to a stranger, but to his own friend. That's when I said, oh my God, what is he doing?
And Alex isn't through. He puts it back in the bag and then goes over to the locker and starts to stash the gun. Then he changes his mind and takes it out again. Finally, he heads for the door and keeps on going, where he's met by his friend Beth, the teen center director.
Why are you touching it?
Alex comes clean and tells Beth about the gun, and that it was almost as if the gun had some hold on him.
What went through your head that moment as you were pointing it to Anthony?
I said everything blacked out. I couldn't even think.
And just what was he doing stashing the gun in that locker? Alex admitted that he was planning to come back for it later with his friend.
Let me hide it so no one will find out. Just keep it for me and Anthony.
Obviously, there's something that's not clicking. They see their family members being shot. They see their loved ones being shot, and that's not enough. What more can we do to educate the kids is the question.
So in the end, what was the final result of our experiment? Well, first of all, most of the teens in Allentown did go and tell the teen center director what they found. But for many of them, if the weapons hadn't been disabled, it might have been too late. While in Yonkers, out of 16 groups of teens who found the guns, fewer than half, 7, told an adult about what they found.
Everyone suffers when a person gets shot.
Which leaves us, of course, with the more fundamental question. Is education the answer? And what can be done to protect Alex and all the other boys as long as they live in a world full of guns? We want to say again that both the parents and the children gave us permission to televise the results of our experiment. And another note. Last year, the American Academy of Pediatrics called for a kind of domestic disarmament, asking parents to keep guns totally out of the reach of any child, or preferably get them out of the home. Still later in our broadcast, we're going to take another look at what happens when small children find guns in a home, as so many of them will.
Still to come.
Wow! Go!
Preschoolers take the test. Can you teach them while they're young not to touch? But first, the San Diego school shooting. Tonight, for the first time, the man who came face to face with a boy and a gun.
He turned and looked at me, and we looked at each other, and he could have walked up and shot me point blank right there.
The heroes of that day, when Primetime returns. Primetime Thursday with Diane, Sawyer, and Charles Gibson. Now always on 24 hours a day. Visit our new website at abcnews.com.
You're looking now live at a memorial service underway this evening near Santee, California, a town that is mourning 2 teenagers gunned down this week, their 15-year-old schoolmate in custody. Tonight, John Quinones has exclusive new details about that day at Santana High School. And for the first time, you'll meet the local heroes.
It was just pandemonium. It was chaos. There were people running, tripping over each other, backpacks flying.
Some of them are bleeding. They're frantic. They're yelling. They're screaming.
This is the story you haven't heard.
of 6 brave men who risked their lives to stop what could have been a massacre. 4 sheriff's deputies, an off-duty cop, and a school security guard, Pete Ruiz, Jr.
Things kind of were just normal, mellow. Bell rang. I heard the first firecrackers, crackling noises.
He carried a walkie-talkie, not a weapon, as he entered the bathroom to investigate. He had no idea that inside this stall, 15-year-old Andy Williams was reloading his long-barreled .22 caliber revolver.
I walked in there, heard, saw 2 students on the ground. One looked at me and said, you know what, get out, get out, get out.
Confused, Ruiz backs out into the hallway and radios for help. Suddenly, he hears more shots and now calls out, 2 down in the boys' room. And then...
Felt something hit me in the back and just tried to get a few more steps out of it, and I just collapsed on the ground. It seemed like everything was going really fast, but at the same time, everything was going slow.
Ruiz is hit 3 times. His shoulder, his right side, his lower back.
The one in my pelvic bones, the one that, if it was a few inches on my part or his part, could have put me in a wheelchair.
He's down, bleeding, unable to move. And then he looks up into the eyes of the young gunman.
He had his gun in his hand right by his head, and he turned and looked at me, and we looked at each other, and I turned my hand up and said, hey, 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 in the sense of, you know, all right, it's time to stop. And basically, I was sitting duck, pretty much, yeah.
He looked at you. Well, why do you think he didn't shoot again?
Honestly, I can't tell you that one. Easily, he could have walked up and shot me point blank right there.
Drove in the front lot, I looked at the clock on the dash, and said 9:22.
By coincidence, Robert Clark, an off-duty San Diego police officer, is pulling up to register his daughter at school.
I asked a faculty member, you know, what's going on, and he said there'd been shots fired on campus.
Instinctively, he runs against the stream of fleeing students along a wall leading to the boys' bathroom toward the gunfire.
I'm looking over my shoulder yelling, I'm a cop, just to make sure they know who I am. And young people are yelling, you know, the suspect's in the boys' room right there. So I stopped right at the corner there, and so the bathroom would have been off to my right, and the doorway I was just slightly out of view.
What did it feel like going down that hallway all by yourself?
I just, you know, I'm a cop, I'm paid to do this. I'm also a SWAT officer. And
so you went right into the SWAT mode?
There was no fear. There was no, I mean, I'm walking in there with a 9mm, you know, 2 magazines of ammo, no vest, no radio, no backup.
As far as Robert Clark knew, he was the only law enforcement officer anywhere near this campus. Now, he had his service revolver, but because he was off duty, he was without any other vital police equipment, like one of the things he needed most, his 2-way radio to call for help. He had no idea that at that very moment, help was racing up this driveway. 4 deputies from the local sheriff's department.
And that's one of the things I asked on the radio is, are the shots still being fired? And
Sheriff's Deputy Ali Perez.
And when they came back and said, yeah, they're still shooting in the school, one of the things that flashed through my mind was, you know, another Columbine. And it's overwhelming.
It was just turmoil.
Deputy Jack Smith.
And still you kept going in?
Yeah. Right.
Not knowing what the heck was
Not
going on.
knowing if we had 1 shooter, 2 shooters. Was he in front of us? Was he behind us? Was there a sniper? We didn't know.
Does fear figure in at all?
I didn't have time to think about it. All I had time to think about was we had to get in there.
And so they move in. Deputy Smith and Perez head for the bathroom where they meet Officer Clark. One deputy takes up a position aiming his shotgun at the door. Another circles around to a grassy area behind this block of classrooms.
When I came across, I saw a student that was face down in the grass with blood from the back of his head, and he was not moving. I mean, at that point, he appeared to be lifeless.
Now a team, the 5 officers storm the bathroom and come face to face with the killer.
When you walk in the door to the bathroom, you're risking your life.
Yeah.
He could have shot you.
That's right.
Any second thoughts to that?
No, there's no second thoughts. When you got a shooter in a high school and he's killing students, you can't even blink an eye. You got to move.
At that point, I told him, drop the gun, at which he did right away.
What struck you about this young man, Andy, and the way he looked?
He looked unremorseful. Just like I'm looking at you. I mean, as far as just calm, relaxed.
As if nothing had happened.
Nothing happened.
I can just picture him smiling because, you know, I saw him smile all the time.
The gunman's best friends, A.J. Gilbert, 14, and Josh Stevens, 15, both knew of Andy's plans, but say they didn't believe him. They now realize the horrific consequences of not speaking up.
Josh, this has really affected you, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's something else they tell us. Along with Andy, they had formed a rock band called Army of the Wicked. Andy's favorite song is by the band Linkin Park, and it's called In the End. Tonight, especially chilling, are the song's lyrics. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore.
What is it you would say to him?
That I'm with him and I know that he's not that bad person, and I hope I see him again.
But the men who risked their lives in the hallways that day also have something to say to Andy.
I'd probably ask the question that every other American would ask, why? Did you not think about, the consequences? Did you not think about the lives that you're shattering?
And yet it could have been so much worse. Consider this. 6 men put an end to the madness less than 6 minutes after the shooting began. But don't call them heroes.
No, I just figured I was doing my job to the best of my ability with my team members.
And we had to stop this from this happening. These are children.
What if it means risking your life?
Then that's what it means. I'll put my training and experience and my protective equipment against that situation for the children without hesitation.
Students have returned to Santana High School now, but noticeably absent are the suspects' friends, the boys you just met, A.J. Gilbert and Josh Stevens. School officials told them they should finish out the year at another high school, not as a punishment, but for their own safety and to avoid any further disturbances. If you want more information on school shootings and the warning signs that should not be ignored, log on to abcnews.com. And when we come back, what will very young children do with real guns when they think no one is watching? The truth about child's play. Stay with us.
And now we want to take you back 2 years ago when we performed another experiment. It was right after the Columbine shootings, and this time we hid disabled guns in a daycare center playroom where young children could find them. And find them they did.
Yeah, daycare guns.
Remember these kids who were having the time of their lives? These guns are real, and time and again they signal they know it.
Someone's coming. They're coming. They're coming. Hide the guns. Hide the guns.
These children were ages 3 to 8, and half of them had been given a course on what to do when they see a gun.
And you can never play with guns.
They were also shown a videotape that the NRA touts as a real deterrent to accidental shootings. But watch what happened after the lecture. We planted disabled handguns in a playroom. We sent children in 2 by 2.
A gun.
Most of the children found the guns, and more than half far preferred them to any toy. A pretend shootout at high noon. A virtual Annie Oakley. Cops and robbers.
Put your hands up.
And if the guns had been loaded,
Shoot me.
this scene could have been real too. Most of the kids just couldn't resist them, and the children who got the lecture played just as dangerously. In that first report, we also showed some surprised parents how their hidden guns were no secret to their young kids. This father watches as his 10-year-old daughter goes to the bedside nightstand. Her father warns her to stop.
You got to stop with this.
Little Michelle let out a gasp. It was a .38 revolver, unlocked, and as her father showed us, fully loaded. And just one of several in the house. Would you ever have suspected that Michelle knew where the gun was?
No, not whatsoever.
And how accessible are the guns in your neighbors' houses? Listen to 10-year-old Brandon describe what happened one day at a friend's house. He says his playmate was showing off.
He had his friend's gun behind his door, and his mom and dad didn't know about it, and he took it out behind it, and he was pointing it around the room, and he was starting to get it towards me, and I ducked.
We played the tape for Brandon's father.
You know, that clip right there gives you a jar. First time I've heard about it.
But most striking to us was what happened when Matthew, the young son of the expert you met earlier tonight, Dr. Marjorie Hardy, participated in our experiment. Her son, she said back then, had been trained so well he'd never touch a gun. But 15 minutes after walking into the playroom,
I won't touch guns. I'm touching a gun.
this little boy who would never touch a gun, who had been trained to avoid them, opened fire.
I would have thought if any kid could resist it, Matthew could. That Matthew could or Matthew would, and he didn't. As a mother, I'm just devastated, and I'm scared to let him out of my sight.
He's dead. He's dead.
After we first showed you this experiment, we were inundated with emails and phone calls from parents who told us that they were going to get the guns out of their homes. We followed some of you as you turned them in to local police or traded them in at pawn shops.
We also heard from a lot of you who felt quite differently, including the NRA. The discussion about kids and guns will continue tonight on Nightline, and that's after your local news.
That's our program for tonight. I'm Diane Sawyer. Good night to all of you, and we'll see you in the morning on Good Morning America.
I'll be there as well. I'm Charles Gibson from all of us here at Primetime Thursday. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.